was during the third period when they were all in the main hall listening to the headmaster, whose name was Mr. Johnson, announcing plans for the end-of-year show that Little Bear got really sick and tired of being imprisoned and started to take drastic action. The first thing Omri knew was a sharp prick in his hip, as if an insect had stuck him. For a moment he was silly enough to think an ant or even a wasp had somehow gotten to his clothes, and he only just stopped himself from slapping his hand instinctively against his side to squash it. Then there came another jab, sharper than the first, sharp enough, in fact, to make Omri let out a short yelp. "Who did that?" asked Mr. Johnson irritably. Omri didn't answer, but the girls sitting near him began giggling and staring. "Was that you, Omri?" "Yes, I'm sorry. Something stuck me." "Patrick, did you stick a pencil into Omri?" Such a thing was not unknown during assemblies when they were bored. No, Mr. Johnson." "Well, be quiet when I'm talking." Another jab, and this time Little Bear meant business and kept his knife embedded. Omri shouted, "Ouch!" and jumped to his feet. "Omri, Patrick, leave this hall." "But I didn't," began Patrick. "Out, I said," shouted Mr. Johnson furiously. They left, Patrick walking normally and Omri dancing about shouting, "Ow, ow!" at every step, as Little Bear continued to dig the needle point of his knife in. The whole school was in hysterics of laughter, and Mr. Johnson was frothing with rage. By the time they reached the swinging doors and departed, outside they ran. Well, Patrick ran, and Omri performed a series of sideways leaps to the far end of the playground. On the way, Omri plunged his hand into his pocket, seized Little Bear, and dragged him out. The agony stopped. Safe in a sheltered corner behind some privet bushes, Omri held his persecutor at eye level and shook him violently, the way you would shake a bottle of medicine. He called him the worst names he could possibly think of, and when he'd run out of swear words, which was not for some time, he hissed like Mr. Johnson. "What do you mean by it? How dare you? How dare you stick your knife into my leg?" "Little Bear dare. Omri keep in dark many hours. Little Bear want see school place, not lie in hot dark. No breathe, no see. Phew, want enjoy." "I warned you you wouldn't. It's not my fault. You made me bring you. Now you've got me into trouble." Little Bear looked mulish, but he stopped shouting. Seeing this evidence that a truce was on its way, Omri calmed down a bit too. "Listen, I can't let you see because I can't take you out. You have no idea what would happen if I did. If any of the other children saw you, they'd want to grab you and mess you about, and you'd hate it. And it would be terribly dangerous, too. You would probably get hurt or killed. You've got to lie quiet till school's over. I'm sorry if you're bored, but it's your own fault." Little Bear thought this over, and then he said a most astonishing thing. "Want Boone." "What? Your enemy?" "Better enemy than alone in dark." Patrick had taken Boone out of his pocket. The little cowboy was sitting on his hand. They were gazing at each other. Omri said, "Boone, Little Bear says he wants you. He's lonely and bored." "Well, ain't that just too bad," said Boone sarcastically. "After he tried to kill me, now he's come over all lovey-dovey. Listen, you redskin," he shouted through cupped hands across the yawning gulf between Patrick and Omri. "I don't care how lonesome you are, and I don't care if you drop down dead. The only good Injun's a dead Injun. Do you hear me?" Little Bear turned his head haughtily away. "I think he's lonely too, really," said Patrick in a whisper. "He's been crying." "Oh, not again," said Omri. "Honestly, Boone, at your age." Just then they heard their teacher calling from the school door. "Come on, you two. You've not got the day off, you know." "Give me your knife," said Omri to Little Bear on a sudden impulse, "and then I will put you together." With only a moment's hesitation, Little Bear handed over his knife. Omri slipped it into the small breast pocket of his shirt, which was empty and where it wouldn't be easily lost, and then he said to Patrick, "Let me have Boone." "No." "Well, just for the next lesson. Then at lunchtime you can have both of them. They'll keep each other company. They can't do each other much damage in a pocket. Reluctantly, Patrick handed Boone over. Omri held them, one in each hand, so they were face to face. Be good, you two. Try talking to each other instead of fighting. But whatever you do, don't make any noise. And he slipped them both into his left-hand pocket, and he and Patrick ran into the school buildings. All right. Okay, so what do you think? There's going to be trouble. Do you think the trouble is going to be between Boone and Little Bear, or between Patrick and Omri, or between the boys and someone else at school? So talk to your neighbor, and we'll see what happens tomorrow. Bye-bye.